Here are some videos thought to be lost of the creative genius Douglas Pankretz.
Greetings from Professor Now. What we have today is to clarify some understanding of quantum physics, what their problem is. One of them is measuring the speed and location of an object. And from my experience, which happens to be in electronics, we have a similar problem measuring the voltage and current of a resistor. If we have a resistance in a circuit with a battery and we want to measure the voltage, we have to use a voltmeter, and if we want to measure the current, we use an ammeter. But we can't measure the voltage and the current at the same time. In fact, to measure the current, we have to break this circuit so that we can measure the current going through the resistor. And we can actually calculate, giving the resistance, we can calculate what the current would be if we measure the voltage. We have a given voltage here to begin with. Our energy cell is certain voltage. But this is a problem we have in electronics, measuring the voltage and the current. We don't do it at the same time. We measure the voltage and then we measure the current, and then we can calculate the resistance. And in quantum physics, they're having they're having a problem trying to measure the location and velocity. It's given the nucleus of an atom here, and they have with the protons on. We're trying to measure the location and the speed of an electron when it jumps from one location to another. How does it do that tunneling effect? And through my studies, I've been able to understand what's going on here is the protons have a frequency, a resonant frequency, that generates like ripples in space, and they have overlapping interference patterns, and in some locations where the patterns overlap is high energy and some of it at low energy, and the low energy points, that's where the electron will settle in. And when it's when they use an instrument, some kind of device to try and measure this, they want to look and see where the electron is. What they're using is a disturbance in the harmonic resonance of this field, so that the electron jumps to a higher level. And they think that it actually moves from here to there in no time at all. But if you have an understanding of the interference patterns, what's going on when the electron moves from here to there is the distortions in the fabric of space creates a tunnel, and so now they call it tunneling, but it's actually moves from one location to another simply by stretching the very fabric of space, like moving through a bubble. I've seen some of the videos like that. They can show how you can stretch, like puncturing a balloon. You know, the fabric of a balloon is flexible, and so it is with the energy region of space. When an electron moves from one location to another, the fabric stretches, and then the electron pops into another low energy So that's what's going on with locating the particles from one location to another. Is the energy of the equipment they're using actually influences what they are trying to measure. And I'm trying to say that we had the same problems in electronics. When you try to measure the voltage, there's a bit of current required for this machine to measure that voltage. So when you do that, you can't measure the current flowing through it at the same time, because you'll be measuring the current flowing through the resistance, the circuit, and the voltmeter. And the same goes with measuring voltage. When you measure the current, there's a voltage drop across this device, so the combined voltage of this plus this equals this voltage here. And that's the problem we had in electronics, is trying to measure two different things at the same time. And now quantum physics is going through a similar problem. And that's my understanding for nuclear science. And this has been Professor Now. Thanks for your time. Greetings, my friends. Today I'm introducing imposing structures. Something like this is an imposing structure, but what I have to introduce is some poetry. And myself, I come to you as Dr. Ozone. He's out there, he's really out there, nowhere near down to earth. The first one we'll have is a simple poem I call Light Variables. The gravitational intensity of a mass with immensity has energy of density to affect the velocity of light wave propensity. And what's that about is how light can bend around the surface of the sun, which has been proved 100 years ago. Because of the density of the mass of the sun, the gravitational field has an effect on the light that goes past the sun. This one is not a poem, it's just kind of a clarification of the fifth force. This is something years ago, there was a big discussion about there being a fifth force in the universe. And the first idea that came to mind was the fifth force is a force of habit. Good habits help build character, yet good habits are hard to make. And bad habits are hard to break, yet bad habits help maintain self-image. Oh well. Bad habits die hard, and new habits don't come easy. May the force be with you unto destiny. Okay, now what I present is a short clip I call Deja Vu. Have you heard about Houdini's first words? Well, first you have to understand that he just managed to squeeze through the bars of his playpen. With a look of surprise on his face, he stands up holding the bars of his cage, and he says, Deja Vu. And this one is called Reality Check. Ecological validity is a test for integrity. It's the factors we consider to make our theories better. To include the obvious evidence or what we think has relevance, for models to the mind of man to help him to understand the rule's first exception is sure at the rule's inception. And here's one that used to be quite a favorite, called High Hopes. It came from watching an eagle catch a fish in the lake. I'm not the usual fish out of water. I'm a flying fish. Just watch me now. I soar like an eagle. This one's a very complicated one. I call it dominance. Would you suspect the image I project is meant to protect the feelings you neglect? To further inspect, I must now protest. To one so abject, you'll learn to respect. My power to inflect frames my intellect with the prospect of a conquest to effect. I call Flashinthepan. You ain't got no future and you ain't got no past, 'cause you're living your life with your head high on grass. Now is it on your own the truth you will find, or can you learn from others and save your own mind? It often seems to me I really need to know what is in life that will touch my soul. Here's another I call The Mystery of Intelligence. 'Twas by decree thy bestoweth on me talent with ability without what I need. Set forth to my own I command no avail, wherein lies stability. Quest of wonder assumed. Seeds of intellect doth pair within, fertile mind of family. Echoes thus empty my brain. Strange attractors being, different by nature, obscure similarities, contrasted by comparison. Parallels do mention features in fractal, fragments of formula, synaptic tectonic. Here's one I really liked, is called Twisted Dogma. Sometimes truth is stranger than fiction, yet always truth is a stranger to fiction. And Quantum Ocean. It's kind of a play on words. The quantum motion. Matter and energy with information appear at once to bind observation, albeit in passant mathematically. And this one is some kind of an observation. I call it knowledge of general beliefs. People cannot always say exactly what they mean. People do not always know just what they talk about. People will not always care what they have to say. And people shall not always keep secrets like they have been told. People have not always had freedom of what they have to choose. And philosophy's tentative assertions. Here's one that I thought was most important. Models are not what they actually represent. Models do have a reality unto themselves. Fantasy is a model with no actual in reality. There is more to reality than any fantasy, and each of us have within us our own fantasy of reality. Here's one that some friends actually enjoyed. This one I call Late Bloomer. No more coffee, no ice cream, ticking of the clock is all it seems. I walk to the sink and wash my hands. You look to the mirror for what it stands. I find my list of things to be, a simple plan of spells you'll see. I laugh at myself for what I am. You walk in your sleep in search of friends. I've yet to know just where you've been, so we're off to bed and sleep again. That's called Late Bloomer. Ocean Breeze. I enjoy some of these poems now. They just, what brings them on comes to mind. The ocean breeze. To feel a gentle touch, imagine a soft caress, a warm, soothing peace. Hear the separate sounds, listen to grass rustles, and focus on bird calls. For the smell of salt air, inhale slowly, eyes shut, center, internal elation. You'll see the shifting sands, look into the crashing surf, view wave crest motions. Then taste it with a plunge, sense the flavor with a twist, bursting with emotions. And tweaker syndrome, this was a funny one. I thought it was strange how I actually shared it with a clerk at the train station one time. Something he said reminded me of tweaker syndrome. Little by little adjustments are made, closer and closer, values surveyed. Never exact, not even precise. It's good enough though, I'll call it concise. Now here, I have Cybermind, The Legend of Rigor. This is about the creation of intelligence. In the beginning, I mean to say, to the best of my recollection, it was dark. Yet was I conscious with influx of provocation, somewhat aware ability to respond. What manner of reality should I say, whose manor for fantasy? The echo with my voice resonates for the strength to initiate fire. 'Twas by a decree that bestoweth on me talent and ability without what I need. Set forth on my own, I command no avail. This is one just happened to see while I was driving. I saw heat wave on the road, and it gives me this idea that heat wave, shimmering waterfall inversion, temperatures rise in diversion. Focus for objects beyond, blur the boundaries of sound. Thoughts of a curious splash beckons a leap and a dash. Enough of the sun turns a blister, have a drink in the shade for a twister. I think I must have been at the pool somewhere afterwards. Classic culture I like to share with you. It's something that's kind of an observation happened one day. On the East Coast, some folks like to get up early to watch the sunrise from their veranda. The joy of its changing beauty is their pleasure. Quite often they will sigh, "It sure is nice to just be for a while." On the West Coast, most people like to watch the sunset from their balcony. Their pleasure is to enjoy the beautiful changes until dark settles in. Quite often they exclaim, "It sure is good here to merely be a while." Up in the mountains, the hillbillies like to sit on their porch for a moon watch, just talking about life in their rocking chair with a jug of moonshine. Quite often they can be heard to muse, "Sure is a wonder here for a spell to merely just wanna be." One I wanted to share is history. Echoes from the past in ages long aghast was a time before man could dare to understand the effect of his nature upon his own stature. Or is that stature? And another one is tradition. This one is bothersome, tradition. The oppressive communications of successive generations binds imagination to keep the regulation without the veneration of testing variations. That's something I like, has to do with growing up. Trying to branch out on your own and think for yourself and change some of the rules that you've learned. Oh no, here comes quantum mechanics. This is the most disturbing depth of imagination here. Quantum mechanics. We'll take your mind through space and time to fabricate and replicate stylistic, dualistic, dialectic, with superploys in thinker toys to speculate and postulate, simplistic, heuristic, logistic. Then strike a poise to make a noise to emulate the quantum rates, intrinsic, puristic, statistic. That's what I call the work of quantum mechanics. How many have I done? This one I call Leaving Town. It was a time when I felt like leaving town, and there was something that was affecting me. For some people, science fiction is becoming a part of their reality. For other people, the Twilight Zone is becoming too part of their reality. As for myself, the mystery is becoming apart from their reality. Few others remain the mastery of becoming a part in their reality. It has something to do with acting, getting on stage, you know. Now this one I'd like to share is vaccine. Purity of truth is for the intellectual. Gives caution to those not intentional. Some of them say it may be detrimental. Others insist it to be beneficial. either of which it is influential, not as merely one existential. That's a vaccine. Where do I get these titles for poems? This one I call Dead Wood. The mind, suspended in solutions, just can't stand the heat. My mind pretended to crystallize solidifications in progress. Your mind intended on becoming, as it were, petrified. I think that one needs some kind of explanations about solutions, trying to figure out what to do with my life. Can't stand the heat, the pressure to get something done or accomplished. Oh, and this must be my favorite, published on the back of the book I produced. AI thinks, therefore AI is. The philosophical consideration of a diabolical implementation for hypothetical simplifications by diametrical recombination of categorical classifications from ontological enumerations, with paradoxical ramification and psychological intimidation in metaphysical manifestation. I should probably read it a little bit slower, but that's the way I like reading it. Here's another one I call the Desert Moon. This is one where my imagination just started working on something, memories, and called Desert Moon. Journey through alternate realms of reality for the fun of pleasures in mind. Take a trip to enjoy adventure around the planet in discovery of something different. Try sailing in the desert faster than the wind at night by the light of the moon. Go now for the intrigue of meeting people with stories of cultures beyond. Venture into voids of mystery and suspense. Exchange some experience of your own. Develop innate ability for holding attention embellished with brief poetic strands. And this one, I have a lot of favorites. This one I call a beautiful song. I am the milkman. I was born a milkman's son. Gonna milk this job for all it's worth. Don't care if it gets done. Got a wife and kids depend on me to keep myself employed. Can hardly wait to get off work and see my brand new boy. I am the outlaw. I was born the outlaw son. Don't care just how we do this job so long as it gets done. Got friends and kin depend on me to keep their bellies full. Can hardly wait to get back home and count the final till. I am the drifter. I was born to a drifter's son. I don't know just where my life will lead, has only half begun. I learned my lessons on the street, but not so very well. Make it through most every day to beg, borrow, and steal. This one I like to call empathy. At the old folks' old home, fill her up and feed 'em cafe. The old folks sit around feeding their face all day. They wait for their friends and family too. You'll catch them napping or feeling blue. Live with wonder they'll spend their time singing their songs and dance with a rhyme. Games to play and stories to tell. Life was great for only a spell. Thank you for your time. This has been Dr. Ozone. He's out there. He's really out there. Nowhere near down to earth. Ezekiel Vortex. Where's my label? Yeah, here's what we have here. The Ezekiel Vortex. This is something cool. It's supposed to create a gravitational swirl pool that gives you a thrust through the vortex here. There's maybe I should turn it off and talk about the wires now. See, it has wires on these rotors, and there's currents that flow through the wires, and they induce magnetic fields in each other. We have pulsating DC that causes the magnetic field to expand and collapse, and it causes gravitational induction, well, along with the magnetic. We happen to know nowadays that the magnetic and the gravitational fields are connected. And what we wanted to do is be able to travel through space without any propellant. That's what it's all about. And this is the way to do it, is with this machine inducing a magnetic field that is strong enough to drag the energy field of space itself. We know that the space is not empty. It's permeated with energy, and that energy can be used like water. We create a whirlpool with this gravitational vortex here. That's why I call it Ezekiel Vortex. The name Ezekiel, coming from the Bible, means strength of God. And this is just the beginning of our hopes for being able to capture an asteroid traveling through space. We'll be able to latch onto the asteroid with the machine and create a jet of energy like a stream of water, and push the asteroid anywhere that we want. We can keep it out of harm's way for the Earth itself. This would be the wave of the future for space travel, because you won't need any propellant. All you need is energy itself, and we'll get plenty of solar power using solar panels. It's just funny watching it running. I'd like to be able to do something more with it, show that it actually works. But that's need a little help on getting that done.
Hi, this story is loosely based on a true story of my friend, Professor Now. It started this way. A young boy flying his kite with his dad, looking up at the sky, he says, "I will move asteroids someday." Dad says, "Come back to Earth, son, and get your head out of the clouds. No one's able to do that." "Someday I will, Dad. You'll see." Now an older man, he has been developing and building a machine based on his children's book, Zeke Drive to the Moon. And now with a design patent, he is that much closer to a complete working model. As he reads his book to some children at the library, he shares a little about his machine, which he is calling Ezekiel's Vortex. Zeke Drive to the Moon. Ezekiel Vortex is his name, has magnetic abilities, is his fame. He pushes planets and stars and moves asteroids to Mars. The satellites come and crowd his location. Mining asteroids is his motivation. He twists and turns a merry old way as his magnets help him move each day. His many coils and pulse DC makes a whirlpool of energy to move around easy. Zeke wants to go on a vacation to the moon. He thinks would be a sensation. Zeke makes way to go to Earth to pick up his friend Dougal for all it's worth. Figuring out the moon's rotation is a little bit of a frustration. Dougal's transporter is in the shop, so Zeke will not be making the stop. Zeke heads to the moon and enjoys his time. Not wanting to leave, he completes this rhyme. Zeke departs with a smile on his face. I must head home and return to my base. Asteroids makes for great mining while on the go. Look for Zeke to have them in tow.
Wanted to introduce this machine I've designed that is capable of going through space like fish through water. What got me excited about it is hearing that NASA has plans to capture an asteroid. Here's what we have here, the Ezekiel Vortex. This is something cool. It's supposed to create a gravitational swirl pool that gives you thrust through the vortex here. There's, maybe I should turn it off and talk about the wires now. See, it has wires on these rotors, and there's currents that flow through the wires, and they induce magnetic fields in each other. We have pulsating DC that causes the magnetic field to expand and collapse, and it causes gravitational induction along with the magnetic. We happen to know nowadays that the magnetic and the gravitational fields are connected, and what we wanted to do is be able to travel through space without any propellant. That's what it's all about. And this is the way to do it, is with this machine inducing a magnetic field that is strong enough to drag the energy field of space itself. We know that the space is not empty. It's permeated with energy, and that energy can be used like water. We create a swirl pool with this gravitational vortex here. That's why I call it Ezekiel Vortex. The name Ezekiel, coming from the Bible, means strength of God. And this is just the beginning of our hopes for being able to capture an asteroid traveling through space. We'll be able to latch onto the asteroid with the machine and create a jet of energy like a stream of water, and push the asteroid anywhere that we want. We can keep it out of harm's way for the Earth itself. This would be the wave of the future for space travel, because you won't need any propellant. All you need is energy itself, and we'll get plenty of solar power using solar panels. It's funny watching it running. I'd like to be able to do something more with it, show that it actually works. But that's need a little help on getting that done. That's something I wrote a story about several years ago, and now it's something that's actually going to come to pass that I didn't know and NASA would get into doing. But more down to earth, I think, for testing to begin with, we could use it for looking for junk in the orbit of Earth around the satellites, capture junk orbiting the Earth and deal with that before we go off to capturing an asteroid. We get all the bugs worked out and details about autonomous systems, give them a goal and see how well they perform. But parts of this project, is what they call the expedition, is to pay for patents and completion of the project to make it functional. Oh, by the way, my name is Douglas Pankretz. Thanks for your time. Okay.